and another effective one. Matthew breaks a tackle, breaks another, gets a block. There are no flags and the race is on. And Matthew goes 90.
Burrow with the snap. Here comes the blitz. Burrow steps away from it, throws, catch made! Justin Jefferson has it at the 38, racing down the far line, sideline, 10-5, touchdown Tigers!
Another play fake by Burrow, and a deep strike, and an open receiver, Jamar Chase, another touchdown!
Daniels pulls it, takes it himself, he's got the sideline! Jane Daniels off to the races! And a bang back inside, he takes it to the house! 85 yards for Daniel!
Go ahead and say it, Ed.
Go Tigers!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another edition of the Gold Standard Podcast. I am your host, Joe, and if you're an LSU fan, this is your place for LSU updates, news, and unsolicited comments from your boy. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, jump down in the comments. Let me know what you think about LSU and the bowl game that we saw yesterday. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the transfer portal, which is less than a week away. So, if you don't know, which I assume you know because you're here following this LSU channel, LSU had its bowl game last night, the Kinder's Texas Bowl, where they played the Houston Cougars, who were the number 21 ranked team in the entire country. LSU came into this game at 7-5, down season after firing Brian Kelly, but looking like they're on an upward trajectory with hiring Lane Kiffin and looking forward to next season. Houston trying to cap off their season. They were 9-3 coming into the game and finish out at 10-3. And I had a few conflicting thoughts about this bowl game. Number one, it snuck up on me. You know, with all the LSU news that's out there with Lane Kiffin and the transfer portal and recruiting, everything just kind of moved to the forefront, and it was almost like LSU's bowl game was kind of like the last thing on the notch of this season that most fans were just wanting to get it over with, just to do it, to get it by, just to see our Tigers one last time. So as I went into this game, I had a little bit of a tempered expectation of what would happen. I wasn't super excited. I was excited to see the team again. I was excited to see Coach Kiffin, him give some comments, his first comments since the introductory press conference as the LSU head coach. So there was a lot of things that I was excited to see. I was excited to see how Michael Van Buren would look after a month of preparation. I was excited to see Harlan Berry, which we'll get into later. Excited to see Tre'Davious Green. Excited to see some guys on defense step up and get some time, like Deshaun Spears. Tylen Singleton was another one that stepped in and got some time that didn't normally get time. C.J. Jackson was another one. Was looking forward to see DJ Pickett and P.J. Woodland and some Jakeem Jackson, which we got some of yesterday. So, you know, as I got ready to watch the game and turn it on, I was just, you know, I really didn't have high expectations. You know, coming into this game, I was aware that on defense, the Tigers will be missing a lot of starters. They'll be missing A.J. Halsey. That's one. Mansour Delane. That's two. Both Weeks brothers, Witt and West. That's four. Harold Perkins was going to be out. That was five. Jack Pyburn was going to be out. That's six. So at least, six starters out on defense. So, I was a little uneasy about getting super excited about the game and what I would expect from the game, just because I didn't know what to expect. And that's kind of been an amalgamation of LSU's season this year, is just you don't know what to expect. You know what to expect on some facets, especially on offense. But going into a bowl game like this where we had a month off, we got an entirely new coaching staff. It's just, you just didn't know what to expect. You just didn't know what you were going to see. So, like I said, I was kind of out of the loop. I told my wife, LSU plays tonight. I mean, we were out getting some dinner and we were a little late getting back in. So, but I did restart the game from the top. You know, I started at about 8:30. It was late coming on, but I turned the game on, and first thing I see is Barry Brown kickoff return to the house. And I'm conflicted because I'm like, what is this happening? You know, LSU is scoring points on the first time that they get the ball, number one, and on special teams, number two. And we haven't seen that electricity like that from Barry Brown all year, which we were expecting. He came into the season tied for the lead or up there towards the top all time in SEC return touchdowns. So I think we expected a little bit more electricity from him. So to turn that on and see that, it's kind of like, is this for real? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit back and relax. And then I see us go out and well, I'll do that. We'll talk about all the scoring plays, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that. But to say the least, this game was it was an amalgamation of the season. There was a lot of stuff that reminded me of why Brian Kelly and none of these offensive coaches are there anymore. There's a lot of things that reminded me on defense why we will need a few bit more bodies, I think, than what I initially thought. Just looking at some of the athleticism and the players on the field, I do think there are some areas where we need help that may be more than what I initially thought. And again, it's so much how much can you take into the bowl game because it's meaningless. But at the same time, I can remember watching the bowl game where we played against Kansas State and John Trey Kirkland was your quarterback. And even though we knew we weren't going to win because we had like 40 scholarship players playing that game, it was still fun to see them go out and fight. And they just looked like they were having fun playing the game. So at the same time, it is meaningless, but it's also an opportunity for a lot of players, especially with a new coaching staff. It's an opportunity for a lot of new players to show their worth, a lot of new players to audition not only for Coach Kiffin, but audition for future teams in the portal or what may have you. So, yes, for the fans, there's not a whole lot of meaning for us for the Kinder's Texas Bowl, but you want to win every game you play, obviously. So, as I went into the game, I wanted to win, but I just didn't have any expectations. So let's talk about a few things. So let's go through the stats just really quickly. LSU versus Houston, the box score. Michael Van Buren was 16 of 26 for 3 touchdowns, 267 yards passing. While Connor Wigman was 27 of 36 for 236 yards and 4 touchdowns. Harlem Berry, again, we will talk about him, had 3 carries for 45 yards. Connors, the running back for Houston, had 16 carries for 126 yards and a touchdown. Trey'Dez Green, 4 receptions, 2 touchdowns on 80 yards. Oil, 9 receptions, 76 yards for 1 touchdown. This guy is the second coming of Robert Gronkowski. No players registered sacks for LSU. Eric Walls III had 1.5 sacks last night, and Eric Walls also had 6 tackles last night, 3 solo, while Devon Keys had 14 tackles and 5 of them solo. So a lot of tackles from Devon Keys. Just other stuff I noticed in the box score. Michael Van Buren, 11 carries for 24 yards, long of 19. He looked comfortable last night. Kyle Parker, 7 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Chris Hilton finally caught him a bomb on the left side there, 3 catches, 67 yards. Barry Brown, 1 catch for 37 yards, and Xavier Thomas, 1 reception for 15 yards. Rushing stats, Xavier Thomas had 2 carries for 4 yards and a touchdown. Juwan Johnson, 3 carries for 4 yards. Caden Durham, 5 carries for 0 yards. Total tackles to Marcus Cooley, 11 with 7 solo. Tylen Singleton with 9 and 4 solo. Deshaun Spears with 8 total tackles and 6 solos. DJ Pickett, 7 total tackles and 7 solos, 1 TFL, 1 pass deflection. So things that I was impressed with in the game, or players that I was impressed with. Let's start there. I initially think of 4 players that I was very impressed with. 3 of them on offense, 1 of them on defense. Those players on offense going to be Michael Van Buren. I was impressed with him. Really good performance. He looked comfortable. Like I said, I still don't know where Coach Kiffin sees in him and what happens with him. But last night was his best game of the season that he played. Like I said, 16 to 26, 267, 3 TDs, no interceptions, QBR 86.9. I think his PFF grade was like a 90. So they thought he played exceptional last night. Very impressed with Trey Green. As always, when you throw on the ball, he's pretty successful. He's magical. The things that he can do. 4 receptions for those 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't understand how he just has 4 receptions, but that's another thing for another day. And Kyle Parker stood out very well in the slot. 7 receptions for 68 yards. He's quick. He's shifty. He has really good hands. And he scored a touchdown. So those 3 players I was impressed with offensively. And then defensively, player I was impressed with was Deshaun Spears. And he's going to play a big role on this team next season. I expect him to be a starter next to Marcus Cooley at the safety spot. Long, rangy, quick. He's gotten a lot better at his tackling in the open field. I just think you potentially have a star there with Deshaun Spears at the safety spot. Things I wasn't impressed with. Offensively, it's sort of the same story, right? And this is for my Ole Miss fans that like to talk about how awesome Frank Wilson is going to be. So Harlem Berry comes out the gate on the first drive with a long of 36 yards on 1 play. Tell me why Harlem Berry ends the game with 3 carries for 45 yards. And he did fumble. But you mean to tell me a guy that's averaging 15 yards a carry, a long of 36, was the only guy that could even get any semblance of space or anything like that, because Jawan Johnson, 3 carries for 4 yards. Caden Durham, 5 carries for 0 yards. You mean to tell me between all that, Xavier Thomas, 2 carries for 4 yards. So the other players not named Harlem Berry had 10 carries for 8 yards. But Harlem Berry only got 3 carries because he fumbled. Frank Wilson has this thing to where if you fumble, you might as well hang it up for the night. He's not going to play you. Some sort of weird punishment or whatever thing he has in his head to where he feels like players can't fumble. Well, by God, if Barry Sanders ever fumbled under Frank Wilson, you wouldn't have Barry Sanders. Running backs are going to fumble. And yes, we don't want Harlem Berry to be giving away the ball. And he had about 3 fumbles this year that I can remember. And that's something that he has to clean up. But again, we're talking about a meaningless bowl game. One of the more exciting players on the offense that people want to see is Harlem Berry. So in the midst of averaging 15 carries, he only got 3 carries. 1, 2, 3 carries. And he fumbled on 1 of them. And that's the Frank Wilson experience as a running back coach. That sums it up. For all my Ole Miss people out there that have questions and want to know what LSU fans are talking about with running back rotations, I just gave you the statistics. Your most successful and efficient running back only got 3 carries the entire night because he fumbled once. Well, you know what's so crazy about that? Jawan Johnson's fumbled a lot. He ruined several drives earlier in the season. He has at least 2 or 3 fumbles himself. I don't remember Caden fumbling a lot, but Caden was ineffective last night. 5 carries for 0 yards is the meaning of ineffective. So at no point do we say, hey, let's put him back out there because he's the only one that has juice tonight, because he's the only one that's seeing the lanes. He's the only one that's being effective running the ball when we put it in his gut. He's the only one doing it. Nope. We're going to stick him over on the sideline and punish him because he fumbled. I am so happy to say that I don't want to see that ever again from LSU. If Harlem Berry fumbles the ball, I do not care. He's one of the better players on your team, one of the most explosive and young talents in the entire country, a 5-star number 1 running back in the country. If he fumbles once every 5 or 6 games, I don't care. I don't care. You continue to feed him the ball. Because I just gave you the stats. He was the only one that was effective running the ball in the game. Even Michael Van Buren with 11 carries for 24 yards along a 19 just wasn't effective. He had some scrambles where he got some first downs here and there, but for the most part, when you look at the stat sheet, Harlan Berry was the only effective running back. And we ran him 3 times in a game that we were trying to win. Make that make sense. Which leads me to my next disappointing thing. LSU's offensive line. I don't even know if I have the words to talk about this offensive line. And we'll talk a little bit about the transfer portal because there were some names that hopped in. One of them may be surprising, but this offensive line allowed 4 sacks last night from Houston. Several times on critical downs where we didn't get any protection from Michael Van Buren. And I just think I've said it most of the season. I think this offensive line that we saw this year was one of the worst ones that I've seen in organized football. Their inability to be able to establish the run, their inability to be able to protect up the gut. The tackles were awful. Tyree Adams was god awful last night. I saw a stat, his PFF rating was in the 50s, and it's his 4th consecutive game registering in the 50s. You just can't win with offensive tackles registering in the 50s. Weston Davis is LSU's lowest PFF graded player of all time with grades in the 40s all season, majority of the season. Just it's really astounding how terrible this offensive line has been and how they've been unable to protect, how they've been unable to get a push for the past whatever many years of the Brad Davis era. It's just really, really disheartening. Really, really just sad to say and look out there and see that this is LSU that we're talking about. And we can't run the ball. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad, guys. It's awful. It's been really, really bad. And I think you see with that why most of our offensive line is going in the portal. And we'll talk about that later, all the people that are in the portal. And I'll give my thoughts there. But just this offensive line performance last night, nobody out there gave me any confidence about them being a part of the team next year. Karius Kern is the only one that's in the portal that I would want back personally. And from what I hear, it does not seem like that's trending LSU's way to get him back. I think Arkansas is going to probably overpay to get him to come back home. And I think that's how that one will play out. So very, very upset with the performance from the offensive line last night. But I really can't say I'm surprised because I've been on here, if you've been following the podcast, as I've been potting and talking about every episode, just the lack of guts and balls from the offensive line to just not be able to establish a run game against the opponent, no matter who it was. Just one of the more sadder things I've seen watching LSU football with this offensive line. So I do think you need a complete makeover. I think you need some nasty, grimy roll graders on the inside. I think you need tackles that can hold up in the SEC. So we've got a lot of work to do there. Now I get to the defensive side. I already talked about players that I was impressed with, but I was, and again, I know it's a meaningless bowl game, but I was really unimpressed with the performance last night from Blake Baker and his defense. We know Connor Wiggins is not a great quarterback. We played him against Texas A&M last year before they Marcel Reeded us out of the building. Same thing they did this year. But we know Connor Wiggins is not a great quarterback. So how do we allow Connor Wiggins to look and go 27 of 36, 236 for 4 touchdowns? A lot of critical mistakes, a lot of penalties. I think 9 penalties for almost 100 yards. And a lot of those gave first downs to Houston when you were right about to get them off the field. I don't know if they were as locked in as they need to be. You saw some of the weaknesses. I think there's a lack of athleticism at the linebacker spot. Even watching Tyler Singleton last night, who's one of the quicker linebackers, and Devon Keys, I just think you need more athletic guys at the linebacker spot. Having Whit Weeks back will solve a lot of that. Not having Wes Weeks out there, the experience that hurt last night. But I think LSU has to get more athletic at linebacker. They have to get more fast, sideline to sideline, quicker. Um, they had to have the ability to cover guys out of the backfield. I mean, like I said, Tanner Coles Oil, 9 receptions for 76 yards. He just looked unguardable out there. Um, Even DJ Pickett at times just couldn't guard him, and I was a little puzzled by DJ Pickett's performance, and he's a true freshman, and he's an athletic freak, and I do expect him to be an All-American by the time he leaves LSU. But I was a little disheartened by even his performance last night, just not being able to lock up these receivers on a lot of critical third downs and things like that. I was just very, very surprised at their inability and how ineffective they were against a team like Houston. But I think it all starts with a Blake Baker defense. It's all about havoc and wreaking havoc and how much havoc you can wreak, how much pressure you can get on the quarterback. And we had a lack of pressure all year. Once Gabriel Relaford went down, our ability to rush the passer just significantly decreased. And if you can't get to the passer and you always need to bring 5, 6, 7 guys to get pressure, that's asking a lot to hold up on the back end consistently for 5, 6, 7 seconds if you can't get there. And we just didn't get any pressure on Houston all last night. So that's another area where going into the portal, we're going to have to get some significant difference makers at edge rusher. LSU made a play for Dylan Stewart. They weren't able to get him. But that's the kind of player that you need on the edge in the Blake Baker defense to make this thing work. And we just don't have it. And hopefully we go out into the portal and get it. So, yeah, I wasn't impressed there. So let's talk about the score. 38-35. Like I said, LSU started out the gate up 14-0. Barry and Brown scored a 99-yard kickoff return in the first quarter. Trades Green taught a 23-yard pass from Michael Van Buren at 10:48 in the first quarter. LSU is up 14-0. Houston answers back with 21 straight. Amari Thomas, an 8-yard pass from Connor Wigman makes it 14-7. Amari Thomas scores again from Connor Wigman, makes it 14-14. Tanner Coles Oil, 7-yard pass from Connor Wigman, makes it 21-14, going into halftime. LSU answers back. Trades Green, a 4-yard touchdown from Michael Van Buren. This score is 21-21. Travell Frederick Jr. caught his first pass of the season, I think. Caught a touchdown from Connor Wegman in the third with about 4 minutes to make it 28-21. LSU answers back with a Kyle Parker touchdown, 6 yards from Michael Van Buren, 28-28. And then from there, we had 25-yard field goal by Houston to make it 31-28. Dean Connors with a 20-yard touchdown on that. God, Tamarcus Cooley took such a bad angle on that play. Go back and watch it. Tamarcus Cooley took some very bad angles last night. 38-28, Dean Connors' 20-yard run made it that. And then LSU answers back with a 3-yard run by Xavier Thomas to try to get it in the end zone, and that's your final. How about this? LSU lines up on the goal line multiple times, and we go to shotgun spread, and we're not able to get it in. It's just, I mean, like I said, it's just things that we've seen all season, and it's just really, really disheartening. So LSU ended with 344 total yards. Houston had 437 total yards. LSU had 1 turnover, the fumble by Harlem Berry. LSU had 17 first downs, and Houston had 32 first downs. Wow. LSU 9 penalties for 95 yards. I was right on that. Houston only had 4 penalties for 29 yards. On third down, LSU was 7 of 12, which is not bad. Houston was 7 of 15. On fourth down, Houston was 2 of 3, and LSU was 1 of 1. And here's the other huge stat. Time of possession by Houston, 38 minutes to LSU's 21 minutes. So, yeah, a lot of this was things that we've seen before. things that we've seen throughout the season, things that we've talked about throughout the season. And they just showed true last night. And I'm glad we're at the end of the season here. I'm ready to look forward to the new era, the Lane Kiffin era. I'm ready to be rid of anything to do with Brian Kelly and his era and this season and move on to greener pastures. So before we get out of here, let's talk a little bit about the transfer portal. So as we sit here on Sunday evening, LSU is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 players in the transfer portal. So going into the portal, we have quarterbacks Colin Hurley and Trey People. Colin Hurley was expected after not playing this year, and there's some off the field stuff that happened to him that I won't get into or talk about, but he won't be back. I did not expect him to be back. At running back, Juwan Johnson and Caleb Jackson both are in the portal. I expected Caleb Jackson to go. Juwan Johnson just doesn't surprise me. At wide receiver so far, we have Jelani Watkins, who was a track speedster guy. Never really saw a lot of meaningful playing time. And Kylan Billiot, who was a late riser in that class. They are in the portal as well. Offensive line, where you've seen your most attrition so far. Right now, you have 6 bodies in the transfer portal. From LSU, you have Carius Kern, we talked about. We have Cohen Eccles, who was one of LSU's most tenured guys there, played some of the most snaps. Tyree Adams, who announced he's going into the portal, who was your left tackle most of the season. Ori Williams, another tackle. Paul Mobinga, another guard. And then DJ Chester. That room needs a makeover. It just does. I know it sounds like a lot, and it's going to be hard for LSU to go out and get 7 or 8 able-bodied offensive linemen, but I had no problem with them seeing what they saw in the offensive line room and not wanting any part of it. I think they take Carius Kern back, maybe even Cohen Eccles. But you get Braylon Moore back, hopefully, and you see what you have in some young guys like Solomon Thomas, like Weston Davis. Do they see a future for him? He's a former 5-star. But the offensive line needs a complete makeover. You need to gut it out, change the engine, and start from scratch there. So I'm not surprised there. On the defensive line, we got Ahmad Bro, who played a lot of snaps for the Tigers the last couple seasons. Sadir Mitchell, who was a transfer from Texas, came over for wanting to play for Bo Davis, and Bo Davis ended up leaving, and he got dismissed from the team earlier in the offseason. At cornerback, we got Ashton Stamps, who was a 2-year starter for the Tigers, who didn't play at all this year. Javion Toviano, it's one of those success stories that Javion was a really good recruit. I remember everybody who covered him liking him as a kid and as a recruit, but it was limited somewhat athletically. So it just never clicked. And then Austin Osbury, who was actually the son of our AD, Verge Osbury, he's actually transferring for a second time. He transferred out of Auburn into LSU, and so he'll be transferring again for his second time. So that's where we sit as a transfer portal entries for LSU on December the 28th. We are less than a week away. The portal will open on January 2nd, which I think is next Thursday. Is that Thursday? Nope, Thursday is the 1st. So next Friday, the portal opens up. Again, I expect LSU to be big-time players in the portal. I expect them to be aggressive. They're going to have to remake this offensive line room. They're going to have to go get multiple quarterbacks. They're going to have to get some explosion and some guys at wide receiver. And they're going to have to do some tinkering and tankering on the defensive side as well, more so than what I thought. They need impact edge guys. Wouldn't hurt to get some experience interior defensive linemen. I think they need more athleticism at linebacker, maybe even 2. I think they need a safety with experience, and I think they may not get it. But I think that if you get a guy at cornerback that you think can hold up on an island, it may not be a bad idea. So yeah, that's where we sit. Kind of apathetic watching that game last night, but hey, like I said, we're looking forward to the Lane Kiffin era that's officially kicking off as of today. No more Brian Kelly, no more Frank Wilson. No more terrible offensive coaches. No more low IQ players and coaches on the offensive side of the ball. This is the new regime. This is the new era. If you watch wrestling, them like Triple H, this is the new era. Shout out to C-Jax there. He loves to do that. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this, make sure you like and comment. Make sure you subscribe and turn on your notification button so that you don't miss any updates as the Tigers inch towards the transfer portal. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like LSU news, updates, and unsolicited comments, this is the channel for you. So make sure you subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast, where we love purple, but it is all gold, baby. Merry Christmas to you and yours. And we wish you a happy new year from the Gold Standard. But you know how we do. Go enjoy your family, your loved ones, and play neck.